Hello, my name is AJ Goldsby. I am a life master from Pensacola, Florida, and I'm coming here today to do a video on an interesting chess game. First of all, I wanted to let you know that I'm beginning to pick up the reins again. I had a website where I analyzed the game of the month every month. But however, it's literally been almost 6 years since I did this on a regular basis. But now, after a long interlude, I want to pick up the reins again and go ahead and get back in the saddle and let's go ahead and try to crank out a good high quality game every month for people on the internet to look at. And the game that I chose, actually, I didn't choose this game, to be completely honest. I did not pick this game. A couple of friends on the Chess Games website picked this game, and you can find the details of that in my forum, and also I talk about it on my webpage. And by the way, I already have a webpage for this game. It's already posted, and it's finished, and I will post a link to the webpage under the video. When you look under the YouTube video, there will be a little section that says show more. Just click on that, and the link after I post the video, the link to my webpage will be posted there. But anyway, this is a game that was played at the Aeroflot Open 2011. It's an event played in Moscow, and it's between two grandmasters. White is Grandmaster Maxim Roshtein, and he was born in Leningrad, I believe, but his parents later immigrated to Israel. And he was a very promising junior. He won the World Under 16 world title. And the black is a Chinese grandmaster. His name is Jianchao or Jianchao, but I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but that's about as close as I can get. But anyway, he's a national champion. He's already won the championship of China, and he's also a very well-known player. And I haven't looked at a lot of either player's games. I've seen quite a few of actually Rostein's games when he was younger, but I haven't seen that many games of Jianchao. But now we're going to go ahead and go on to the chess game. Like I said, this is a game that was played in the Aeroflot Open in 2011. It's a very nice game, very well played game. It's not decided by any simple blunders. White simply plays a very good plan. He plays the white side fianchetto variation of the Grunfeld. Black plays a seemingly solid plan, and it's basically not a case of one side makes a mistake and then goes down in flames. I think it's more a very clear example of where one side basically has a good plan and another side has a plan also, but basically one side, White's plan, just his strategy is just better than Black's plan, and because of that, White wins the game, and he wins this game very brilliantly. And as I said, I've already annotated this game deeply on my website. But anyway, on to the game. It begins. The first move of the game is d4, knight f6, c4, g6. Now here, normally White plays knight c3, and that would lead either to a King's Indian or a Grunfeld. Now, White's next move isn't really wrong, but it's a little bit of a departure from the normal move. Just quickly, I wanted to run through, of course, knight c3 would run to a King's Indian, but I wanted to quickly show you the exchange variation of the Grunfeld. And the reason I'm showing you this line is when I was coming up, there was a couple of very famous games that were played in this line. One of them was a game played between Boris Spassky was white and Bobby Fischer was black. I believe it was at the FIDE Olympiad in 1970. And anyway, when I was coming up in chess back in the 1970s, the exchange Grunfeld was considered almost obligatory. I mean, just about everyone played that. Today, though, they're playing lots of other systems. But anyway, d5, c takes d5, knight takes d5. And now the exchange variation is e4, knight takes c3, b takes c3, bishop g7, bishop c4, black castles, knight e2, c5, white castles, knight c6, bishop e3, c takes d4, c takes d4, bishop g4, f3, knight a5, bishop d3, bishop e6. And this is the standard position here in the exchange variation. White can do a lot of different things here. In the old days, they used to always play d5 here, and that was considered one of the main lines, and basically sacking the exchange. Black can take the rook in the corner. White can also play rook c1 or queen e1 or even queen a4. All of these moves have been played before. Basically, the power book gives 14 rook c1, d5, queen d2, queen a4, and bishop f2 as all the moves that have been played in that position. And bishop f2 has only been played one time, but all the other moves are fairly rook c1, queen d2, d5 here, and also queen a4. All of those moves are fairly reasonable. But anyway, that would be just a normal Grunfeld, or what I would consider to be a typical book Grunfeld. But the line that we get in this game is much different than that. Anyway, going back to the game, d4, knight f6, c4, g6. White plays 3, knight f3, okay? And that's basically following the 4 opening principles. And basically, white's avoiding the normal knight c3 in favor of a totally different plan. And it appears we might be headed for a classical King's Indian if if you just make an assumption on what's most commonly played, using the power book or the database, the statistics of the database as your guide. But anyway, black plays bishop g7, white plays g3 now. Now we have a Fianchetto Grunfeld, and I actually have a book on that. It's the Fianchetto Grunfeld by, I believe, Grandmasters Adrian Mikhail Chizin and Alexander Belyavsky. I apologize if I mispronounced the first Grandmaster's name. I'm not at all sure of how to pronounce his name. It's Russian or Slavic, so I don't know how to pronounce their names correctly. But anyway, this is the Fianchetto Grunfeld. Now, or actually, it could be a Fianchetto King's Indian as well. It could lead to that. In the 40s and 50s, the Fianchetto was a rarely standard. In fact, the pretty much the normal way to meet the King's Indian. But later, it was supplanted by other systems like the Averbach and the Samish and systems like that. Anyway, black castles here. White plays 5, bishop g2, and now we think we're going to be heading to a Fianchetto variation of the King's Indian, except black now plays d5, which would make it more of a Grunfeld type thing. Of course, the thrust here of d7 to d5 is what typifies the Grunfeld defense after white has played both d4 and c4. White just goes ahead and exchanges here. C takes, knight takes, castles, knight c6, 8, knight c3, and black plays bishop f5. Now here black has a fairly nice development. All of his pieces are developed to good active squares, and it looks like that black is doing okay. White doesn't look bad either. Obviously, he has his normal, very nominal slight advantage out of the opening, and he also has something that, to the eyes of a master, is very important. White has a central pawn majority. Plus, with the pawn on d4, he has just a tad more space. So we could probably stop here and say that white's just slightly better out of the opening, and a lot's going to depend on who chooses what type of plan from here. Now white's next move, he plays knight d2 here. That's a very interesting retreat here. Like I said, I'm going to analyze this game on my webpage, so I don't really need to analyze everything in the video and just basically more talk about the game itself. But if you're interested in the analysis, my webpage is fairly detailed, and there'll be a lot of variations and also a fairly decent look at the opening. And there's actually links, too, on the webpage. When I quote a game, I link it to the Chess Games website, so that if you'd like to see that game and quickly replay it, you can do that as well. But anyway, here white just retreats. And basically that's putting pressure on the black knight here on the d5 square along the long diagonal. Of course, the long diagonal being the h1a diagonal. And basically trying to put pressure on black that way, and also force him either to protect his knight with e6 or retreat his knight to a worse square. Black plays knight b6, and I was taught as a young player by a master that he told me that a knight on queen knight 3 or a knight on b6 is almost always a poorly placed piece. And Alekhine made a similar comment in one of his games. If you have that famous collection of books, My Best Games by Alexander Alekhine, he talks about those in one of his books. White plays e4, bishop d7, knight b3, queen c8, and here basically black is preparing to play bishop h3 and swap off white's light squared bishop. And that's a standard plan when you're playing one of these black type of positions. Black really doesn't want to push too many pawns. He can't push his c pawn, it's blocked in. His f pawn is really going to weaken too many light squares like e6, and weaken black along this diagonal here, the a2 g8 diagonal. So basically black looks to, he's looking for counterplay, and also maybe post his knights. And again, this is a game, I already said this earlier, but I want to stress that this is a game where both sides choose a plan, and the way it turns out, it's just white's plan is much better than black's. Bishop g5, h6. I'm just going to run through the rest of the game here, get it up to the critical position. Okay, black just played 15, rook d8. And also I'll provide a link to the Chess Games webpage for this game. So if you want to play through it slowly, you can do that as well, and play through it at your own speed. And that's the Chess Games website, where you can replay the games right there on your computer. Now white's next move is very deep. I think it shows a grandmaster's touch. The chess engines don't like this move here. A lot of the chess engines, even the light comes on and the yellow light comes on and they tend to lower their evaluations. But that shows the difference between a grandmaster. I think the grandmaster instinctively knew what the correct continuation was here. He plays RAD1, and I give that a double exclam simply because it's a very deep move and it shows a deep understanding of chess. You might want to assume that maybe, and a reasonable plan for white here would simply to play his queen rook to c1 and his king rook to d1, and that would almost guarantee that his rooks are at least logically placed and well placed for the middle game. But white does something much different here. Basically, not only is he protecting his d pawn, but he's has in mind, I think he already has it in his mind's eye, the possible advance of f4, f2, f4 to f5 and attacking on the king side later. Black plays a5, d5, knight e5, f4, knight e4. Bishop d4, another exclam move. White's exchanging off black's dark squared bishop, and once that piece is removed, it very quickly becomes obvious that once this bishop on g7 is removed, black's king no longer has any defenders. There are no pieces nearby that guard the king. Continuing on the game, black plays e6, bishop takes g7, king takes g7, d takes e6, queen takes e6, knight d4, queen e7, b3, queen b4, rook d3, knight a3, and let's see, white plays queen d2, black plays rook f8, f5. This is a very good attacking mechanism here. The idea of f4, f5 in castle positions when you're attacking black's king, especially when black still has a fianchetto bishop. This idea of f4, f5 was shown by several players, probably the first player who played this type of idea repeatedly and showed that it was a good attacking move was Alexander Alekhine. And again, if you want to see some of those games, I would suggest you get his collection of My Best Games and play through some of those, and you will definitely see examples of this idea in chess, the idea of f4, f5 to attack a black position where he's castled on the queen side and he has pawns on f7 and g6. But anyway, black plays c5 here, and I very quickly want to get to the critical position before I run out of time. And now, here, coming up here, if you want to, you could pause the video. White's about to make a very deep move. It's a move even some of the chess engines like Deep Junior and Fritz 12 don't immediately see or don't immediately take to. Now, to its credit, the very strong chess engine Houdini finds this move within just a few seconds. I mean, almost immediately. And it's a very powerful move. But white plays knight e6. And I give that a double exclam. And it's just a brilliant shot. And basically what happens is black has to capture. If he puts his king in the corner, for example, you can see this quickly, king in the corner, queen takes pawn check, king back to g8, queen g7 would be mate. So already white's, threatening to checkmate the black king if he plays the wrong response here. And this is just a brilliant move. It's a piece sack. And to me, it was not at all typical of what I might have expected here. And it's not even clear that that would win. When I first looked at that, I wasn't 100% sure it was sound because it doesn't look like white gets much for it. But apparently Roshtein had this all very well calculated out. Just quickly running through the game, f takes e6, f6 check, black's forced to capture. I analyze the alternatives on my webpage. Rook takes f6, king takes f6, queen takes h6, very good move, taking away another pawn, removing a pawn from the cover there of the black king. Knight c2, that's pretty much forced. e5 check, that's a very nice move. King f5 again, this move's forced. I analyze the alternatives and the different variations on my website, on my webpage. And now white's next move, queen g7. That's a double exclam in my opinion. Basically, the idea is to sew in the black king. Black's very soon going to be in just dire straits. And it's also another brilliant move because now white's about to give up a whole rook to a knight check. And queen g7, if a lower player like a class D player had made it, you might almost assume that it's a blunder. But it's a very carefully thought out sacrifice by Roshtein. Anyway, knight e1 check, king f1, knight takes d3, check, check, queen 36, queen takes 3, king g4, king g2, king g5, and now queen h7. And now if you'll notice, white's threatening to play h4 and then queen g6, and that basically puts black in a mating web. The only way for black to get out of the mating web now is to give up a tremendous amount of material. He basically have to give up his queen and a rook, and he'll still be losing, but at least he won't get checkmated. And that pretty much does it for my video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you check out my webpage and have a great day.